as a coach, when I engage people in their work in their life, it only can come from me actually really doing that on myself first, because no one wants to hear someone get on a Sermon on the Mount, talking about what one should do when your personal life is a mess.
Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. First and most important question before we jump into all the good stuff is, how are you doing? Like, actually, for real, how are you doing?
I love this. Let's start where we are. I'm feeling really energized. That wasn't true 3 days ago. So I have I'm coming off a really beautiful session with a client, a really touching, honest conversation. And I feel like it's the best energy. So I'm feeling good. And how are you doing today?
How am I doing? I have never had it so good. So that's how I'm doing. Life is great. Recently, I guess, I don't know how long I can say that I recently got married, but I feel like I can say it for at least the first year. So I got married in September. So I guess that's very recent. I
I would
spent,
ride that as long as you can. Ride
yeah,
that canoe.
yeah, I'll say we're 30 years into our marriage. Recently, yeah, we just recently got
You know what?
married.
I'm going to say that too.
It's
My
been
husband and I
beautiful.
just celebrated 9 years, and I'm like, I just got married. Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations. It's been 9 years.
Well, I feel like that's probably good because some of the best marriage advice I've gotten is that you got to continue dating your spouse. And if we're always recently married, that means we're always sort of in this
Yeah.
deep infatuation for each other. We haven't grown annoyed of like some of the things that we've seen for the last 60 years that just fucking bother us, and all of that stuff. But I sort of look at it like that. I just sort of came to that realization in this very moment. So that's kind of cool.
You know, that is, I on Instagram, you see these little reels, and I get the content about stuff like this. And someone said, our job is to stay excited in a relationship. And what you just said was really interesting. And this definitely pertains to what you and I said we wanted to talk about today. You know, this term beginner's mind?
Yeah.
You heard this? It comes from the Zen tradition, but this idea that when we start, you and I and everyone else, listeners included, we're a beginner in something at one time. All of us have. Like there's a first time you played baseball. There's a first time that I got on a stage. And when we did that, you learn for the first time once. You don't get that edge ever again in that craft. What you want is to keep the space that your mind made for all this new knowledge in the middle of the game, when you're experiencing the game. That beginner's mindset is when the aperture is wide and you're willing to get new feedback, modify your system on board. And that beginner's mind applied to marriage is what I was hearing you say, to stay dating, getting the data, being jazzed.
Yeah. Because if you're trying to have something that literally lasts until somebody dies, like, love is not always going to be enough. I'm always going to love my wife. Of course I am, right? She's the most special person that's ever existed in my life. But how do I continue to get excited by her through, how I'm doing? It's not about her making me excited about her. It's about me doing that. And I think that's parallels for sort of everything, like coaching wise, right? If you're going to be a good coach or a good leader, you have to first, be it within yourself. More things are caught than they're taught. And so all of that stuff sort of applies in marriage. Maybe is like the pinnacle relationship, unless you have kids. I know you have kids. I don't have them yet. God willing, I do. But I think that also matures you in another level about who you are and how you want to present in the world, and the way you've, developed yourself and what conditions you have and what things you want to pass on to your kids and all of those incredibly challenging things. But yeah, anything to say off that? Go for it.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying to my client just before we got on the call, as a coach, when I engage people in their work in their life, it only can come from me actually really doing that on myself first, because no one wants to hear someone get on a Sermon on the Mount, talking about what one should do when your personal life is a mess. And it's been a journey for me to, as a parent and a wife, to my husband, to stay focused as I've scaled up my business on really just staying present with that work. And to me, that work is what I just said, staying learning, and that getting cold feedback, getting, handling emotions, watching how I respond in a thoughtful way. That takes energy and exertion. It's like you said something about wanting to talk about resilience, confidence, and creating habits today, which I also want to talk about. And here we are talking about our personal lives, and I'm thinking, creating habits is a very personal, kind of a lonely journey, because no one's going to congratulate you for taking time to work on yourself. But really, that's what's required to perform at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And increasingly, as I work with people who do perform at a high level, the conversation goes back to the beginning of, what am I here to do, and how am I going to do that the best that I can do that? And what do you have to say about that?
A couple things. One, it's like the dating coach, setting about people who the coach who exemplifies the things you want to have. It's like a dating coach who's not married. I just don't fucking understand that. Don't know what that means. I don't know how
Oh,
to
I
wrap my
see.
brain around it. I don't get it. Like, what are you teaching me? Are you like? There's a difference between a dating coach and potentially like a pickup artist. I don't agree with the pickup artist idea, but their job, they're not telling you that they want to be married. They're telling you how to attract something to have sex with it. Okay, at least you're being honest with me in that regard. But a dating coach who's not married and not in a serious long-term relationship telling me how to get into a serious long-term relationship doesn't make sense to me. Or like a really out of shape personal trainer, that also doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying these people don't have knowledge, because knowledge can be acquired for sure, but also the action of it has to be there with it, like paired. Because your words, you may have all the expertise in the world about how to lift weights and do these sorts of things, but you're not doing them yourself, or something's happening, in the back end potentially. But that's what I think about also. And then you said the thing about habits, and I relate it sort of to this podcast. Like, no one congratulates me for rejecting people on this podcast who I don't want to have a platform for, but they will be mad at me if I put someone on and they say something that's like not good, right? But they don't see all the people that I say no to, but they see the one person that I said yes to that potentially said something controversial. And that's sort of like building habits in the dark. Like, no one's going to see you waking up in the morning doing this consistently over and over and over and over and over again, but they might see you mess up in public, and how are you going to respond to that when they didn't see all this work you did on the back end? And I don't know if that comparison makes a lot of sense, but to me it does, just simply because,
Oh,
like, no one sees those emails or those people that you rejected, the conversation that you didn't make public, or whatever the case may be. But that's just you building your own credibility. That's just you building your own trust in yourself. And I think that's much more important than everything, sort of being in the public space.
oh my gosh, this is so good. That concept of doing work in the dark is, I think, the single most powerful way of thinking about habits, because that work pays off. There's this story about Picasso. Someone commissioned art from Picasso, like, paint me this elephant. I want an elephant. And they, came to his shop and like, can I see a draft? Like, have you worked on it? And he would sketch it 1,000 times. And no one saw this. Like, he would sketch the elephant and throw it away, and sketch the elephant, and throw it away, and sketch the elephant, and throw it away. And when they come back, they're like, "Where are your sketches?" "Well, I've thrown them all away, but I'm ready now." And so he sketches it, and they pay him, and he says, the person's like, I'm not satisfied with this. You just sat there with a pen and ripped it right now in front of me. That didn't take, like, where's the work? And he's like, the work has been in the iterating, the showing up every time to, in, the story, he doesn't explain himself, but This is the metaphor for creating habits. No one's going to look at your single post that changed someone's life and went viral and see that you've been doing it 1,000 times, or see, like you said, waking up at 4:30 and like writing and going to the gym. But I think that's where that pays off, and that is part of why people are successful who do work in the dark. They don't seek that validation. They're not doing it for the people to congratulate them and say like, oh, what a good job you're doing, you're working so hard. It takes that confidence you talked about, your trust in yourself, to say, I'm going to do it, my business, my life, my way, according to what matters to me. But I actually first have to take the time to understand what I'm about in my relationship, what I'm about in my business, what are the habits that I'm creating, and more importantly, the ones that I'm no longer doing. That's, no one talks about this. The habits you don't do anymore are just as important, if not more important, than the ones you do. Because you free up all your energy for the bullshit that you're no longer up to center completely on the few efficient, smart things that'll cause you to succeed. And that could go into a whole thing, Erin, about fulfillment, which is the whole thing, the game all of us are playing that no one wants to talk about. Because success, what it looks like, your money, your prestige, your audience, your impact, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's what everyone sees. But what people don't see is what it feels like on the inside, what actually you live with every day, your habits, your sense of your values, like we talked about, what matters to you. That stuff is what we all really want, is to have a life that inspires us, so we know we're really making a difference, that we're happy with who we are. Like not having a relationship where we're using everything we do to beat ourselves up with like a bat to beat ourselves up. It's like, I want a relationship with myself where I'm my own best friend. When I lay my head on the pillow, I'm like really grateful for my life. You started off our call saying I had never had it so good. To be able to say that to yourself is so powerful. You know?
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
No, beautiful. You want to know the best quote I've ever heard about improving your life?
Sure.
The number one way to improve your life, you know what it is? Stop doing things that make you feel like shit. Is basically what you said. Now, harder said than done, obviously, because sometimes we don't really know what patterns or things are making us feel like shit, but we have sort of an instinct potentially, but then it goes into, do I trust my instinct? Has it led me down the right path? Oh, I don't want to. So all of that stuff, yeah, is important, and you got to dig into that. But if you're thinking solely on habits, we know that we need to eat well, move well, sleep well, think well. That's pretty much the basic of it, right? So, okay, so what are those things in that list you need to stop doing? Okay, I need to stop, waking up in the middle of the night and having a bowl of M&Ms. There might be some underlying issues. On top of that, everything is sort of layered on itself. I get, but you could also just recognize that might be the case. And so I think that's an important question to start. I ask my athletes all the time when they're doing a weekly review, what's one thing you want to start doing? What's one thing you want to stop doing? And what's one thing you want to continue doing? And it's very easy. Okay. I know I need to start spending an extra 15 minutes doing some basic footwork drills. I know I need to stop, leaking out with my front side when I'm swinging at a fastball. And I know I need to continue, trying to be a great teammate and show up every day with effort. Okay, great. Now I have some goals for the week that are actionable, that are controllable, and that I can move forward with. And I know what I need to work on. But if I say I need to work on everything in my life all of the time, you're not going to work on anything, just one little thing. And so I think those are important questions to start asking yourself when you're thinking about your habits, especially when they're just coming down to, the fundamentals of trying to be, a better human. And I know for me, when I'm thinking about my life, I want to feel useful, and I want to feel like I'm appreciated. And I know a lot of men that I talk to, those are the two sort of most important values, or not values, things that they care about when it comes to them working really hard for, say, their family or anything. They want to feel useful and they want to feel appreciated. And those things are really important, at least, coming from sort of the gender role of a male. That's what's important to us. And I don't speak for every male on the planet, obviously, but, the ones that I've talked to, that is at least a motivating point for us. So if you have a partner or a spouse and you appreciate them every once in a while for working those long hours or doing those certain things, and they feel useful, like they actually matter in the world. It's a very powerful thing. And I know as a man, we'll go to the ends of the earth for the people that we love to do those things if those two sort of values are represented. Not to go on a tangent there, but
you do speak for my husband. In fact, I feel like you talk to each other, because he and I literally had this conversation last night after putting the kids to bed. We've done a lot of work in our relationship. We've gone to lots of couples counseling. Both of us see counselors to stay committed to doing the work in ourselves, to show up. Because in a relationship, Aaron, we're mirrors. And our job is to really be like, don't be in a relationship. And all of us listening out here, don't be in a relationship if there isn't an appetite to take on the work of staying aware of what it's going to take to show up and execute on the things you care about. Like, to be appreciative of my husband, it takes a lot of grace for like not catching him making mistakes, or feeling upset about something that's going on for me. Like, you got to work on your stuff in order to be able to be appreciative. For example, I was writing down. You probably saw me taking notes while you're talking, because you're making me think a lot about some stuff that matters the most to me. If I can share with you, you said when you talk with your athletes about habits. Someone's at my door right now.
go check
Should I
it.
answer? I don't even know who it is.
That
This is going to
seems
be
a
an
little.
interruption for our podcast.
I mean, it's all good. We'll circle back. Whatever you want to do.
Oh, I think they went away.
Okay.
You said talking to them about what you stop doing, like the bowl of M&Ms at night. I had this. Have you ever heard this term? Emotions like anger that's unresolved, that we don't put light on or like give a valve to like let it have its voice. When you push those emotions down, which we're really good at in this society, Western culture, we really know how to do that. Those emotions go to the basement and lift weights, and they get stronger. They get stronger down there in the basement, and they're going to come back stronger. And so when we think about the reason why we go to the M&Ms in the middle of the night, our emotional life tends to just be a system to alert us to information that we're not already in tune with. But we have this whole weird relationship with emotions. Like, it's going to be this like sea, the soup that we're going to drown in, never get out of, and like you're weak if you go in there. And it's got a bad reputation, but our emotional system simply contains struggles that when we're afraid of them, we like want to feel like we have to hide that we're angry or hurt. And then it's like you feel ashamed on some level, and that makes you feel weak if you have emotions. And then you have to go out and front like you don't have them and you're fine. And fronting feels really bad, and it feels like you're fake, and then people feel bad. And so that whole reputation that we have with emotions, it's actually a broken system. And then we're eating M&Ms in the night, and then what does that lead to? But what we could do is become resilient. And what I really am interested in is how, especially the men that I know, and you're clearly here for this, how you reframe to become a really powerful person is what it takes to reinvent your relationship with things that weaken us, whether it's emotions or otherwise. I don't want to speak for you as a man, but we don't have training in getting real support and having a sense of safety and strength in ourselves around what we're struggling with. But what if we did? Like, what if we knew how to emphasize relationships that allowed the vulnerability of those emotions being okay, and that you would get actual support, and there would be a release valve that was healthy around like communicating about it? Because what we know about that is it makes you feel safe. There's a sense of safety, and like we all as children wanted to be held. Like, we needed a hug sometimes, and then little boys quickly were told like you should be tougher than that. But that actually causes shame. And so if we felt safe, we would feel strong. And that strength, like you can get back out in the game, gives you grit, and it gives you a willingness to take risks and to know how to feel emotions in a healthy way is a path to resilience and a path to high performance. And so what I really love is talking about this, what we're saying right now, of how you can make habits that really change the game.
Yeah. I've thought a lot about this. And it's sort of like, you'll know this from your professional acting career and improv. It's got to be a both and situation or a yes and situation when talking to young boys about dealing with emotions. So that's because that's how you can integrate it. Yes, we want to be tough, but how do you do that? You do that by this, this, and this, and this, and then there's an integration of it all. Because if we have the appropriate role models, which I think is probably the number one thing that young boys need to be integrated in their masculine, I call it being a warrior poet, because you need both ends of the stick. But if there is a coach who has expressed, like I saw this last night when I watched the Penn State Notre Dame game. The Penn State coach, they lost. His team lost. All of his players are crying. And he's just consoling them. They're all crying and hugging together. And they do this press conference. And he talks about how much he loves his players and how much he cares for them. And at the end, he's like, handshake, high five, I love you. And then they walk off and there's just a press conference with him. Like, that means there's a special like bond there, that when the toughness happens, that coach needs to coach those players hard. Like, he needs to tell them, you could do a little better. This is not right. It's coming from a place of, I fucking love you, man. Like, really care. Like, and I've spent time in the trenches with you, caring about you. And so this is coming from an absolute place of love. When you just start with saying, this is what you could do better, there's no nothing. You know that. If you don't build a relationship with your coaching clients, they don't give a fuck what you have to say. It might be really good, like really good stuff. It might be actually very true. But you haven't built any sort of connection or bridge to saying this. And so young boys need that both and. Yes, we need a little bit of toughness. Yeah, we have to pick ourselves up and we have to be resilient. We have to learn to overcome challenges. We're not just do that by someone yelling at us. We're going to do that by someone saying, I love you. I'm linking arms with you. I'm in the dirt with you. Now let's build ourselves up together, because I know you can. And I know you can. And sports were such like the most perfect thing for me. I think everyone should do sports, not because so they can win championships, but so they can learn these lessons. Like, let me tell you, like, one of the most amazing, incredible stories that's ever happened to me on a sports field. It was actually really recently, and I've been doing sports since I was like 4. It's like 7 months ago, and we're playing this game. It's like a showcase tournament, so every player is like quite good, and they're all like 14, 15 years old. And we were losing this game like 7-3. We come back in the last inning. I think we're down 1 run, and the winning run's on first base. And something happens, and the kid like gets distracted, or something happens, or a good play, he just gets picked off at first base, and we lose the game. Okay, the other team wins, we lose, game's over, we lose the championship. He immediately starts crying. What happens in this moment is that almost every single player and coach walks over to him and starts consoling him. They didn't cheer about the championship. They didn't run around, do whatever. Every single person on that field went over to this kid and said, dude, it's all right. We love you. Make mistakes happen. And so, yes, sports can get a bad rep because there's a lot of toxic stuff that happens in sports. I see it all the time with parents and rankings and all this other bullshit. But there are also magical moments that can teach people how to be real, genuine, honest people, while also being competitive and also trying to be their very best. And that sort of yes, both and conglomeration is sort of the most powerful thing that we could do as humans. And so that's, what I think about that. I could talk about that stuff all day, but yeah.
Really, I felt a cry rising in me, because I can't think of anything more powerful for that young person, and for everybody, including yourself, because you said this was the most powerful thing, to realize that actually the whole point of what we're doing, this competition, is to be connected to each other. And in his real experience, like, it is such a tender moment to have it all come down to you, and you literally drop the ball, so metaphorically speaking, it came down to him. And so many things could have happened in that moment. And all of the fears he has about who he is, and the judgment, and like, I let everyone down, all that stuff that starts to surface, that we all, by the way, all have that. Everyone knew we're on the same journey, actually. Like, the journeys converge into this point where the whole point is to be like, you did your best. It didn't work out. You are so loved, and we're here together. Like, oh God. Oh my God. If that's not why we're all here, I feel like taking this to acting, because you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I have not dominated a stage as an actor for a little while, but it's still like I carry that. And my actors, so to speak, who I train, are now people in the real world on stages talking about their most powerful moments. The pinnacle time for me was actually when I was training actors. I've been on Shakespeare stages, and we took a Shakespeare show when I was 18 to the Stratford upon Avon, Shakespeare's birthplace. And we performed our shows in this. I've had some incredible theater and some film experiences that were amazing. But the thing that really, I have equivalent, similar experiences are when I have had my actors who were afraid to be on stage. It's a very well-known fear, being in front of people, public speaking, being seen on the stage. It can be really scary for people. So people come to acting classes because they don't actually want to become actors all the time, like not to be like on a TV show. Some do. They're here to feel comfortable in their skin and to accept themselves, because all of the fear and judgment that they feel from others, actually, it's all our own stuff we're inventing that people say about us. And it's actually like the bat we talked about, beating yourself up with. They want to learn how to put those bats down and feel really good in front of people, like stand in front of people. So in my studio, we would train 3 hours twice a week in the studio. It's a professional studio, so it's a lot of time. You've got to put the time in. And then they're rehearsing outside of that time. And I would have a cap of 12 students at a time who are professional acting students. And again, not everyone was there to get an agent and move to LA and do this thing. Some of them, you have to get your game going and getting gigs and auditioning to really hack it. In that studio, I would have students getting on stage with scripts, like an HBO script where you're performing a story. And these are universal stories because we're all humans. We have relationships, like it's a breakup, or a betrayal scene. And to get up there, your job is to be believable, because you and I have seen TV shows. The best shows, you forget you're watching a show. You're living it, you feel it. So the actor's job is to create their craft to the extent that they're truly living that moment. They're living that moment out. And it is very scary, Erin, to get in this class and get to the point where you're screaming in someone's face in a breakup scene, or to let tears, like crying isn't an activity you do, it's the thing you allow to come forward. It's a very emotional experience to allow a cry versus like fake crying. Everybody knows a fake cry, but to really have a cry appear and rise out of you, that's acting. That's like true acting, is living that out. Where I'm taking with this is the actors who would say, I didn't know I could do that. And they watch each other go, and it raises everyone's game when someone's willing to take a risk, to scream, like let out that emotion, like, I can't fucking believe you do this to me. And then they start to cry, and you're on a journey up there on stage. And then when my job, when the light comes up, everyone claps for those students. They did their job. And then I give them their critique. They're sitting there. They're still like coming down from that. And the other actors in the seats, and they're going up next, are like, okay, now what does that mean for me going up there? How much skin am I going to put in the game to put myself out there that way? I could go on about the acting journey and what it does to people and how it changes their lives, similar to sports, but I'll leave you with that. See what you have to say about that part.
Well, I can relate to it so much because after my baseball career, I became a professional wrestler. And so like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And what they tell you is that the best professional wrestlers of all time are totally themselves, but with the volume turned up, because that's the easiest to portray. Like there's some wrestlers, right, who are just larger than life characters, right? The Undertaker is the dead man. Obviously, he's not dead in real life. Like there's certain ones that just worked for this situation, and there's clowns. But you look at Stone Cold Steve Austin now, he's just like a Texan who likes to drink beer. And that's basically what his character was. He just, put up his middle fingers, but he was expressing himself in the most honest way. And that's why fans connected with him so deeply. And so that makes sense to me. And there's especially in wrestling, there's still an element of pretend and acting because we're trying to portray a real fight. But what draws people in is what you mentioned, is this idea of like stories and narratives that we all know to be true. My best friend turned on me. Oh my God, this guy's a little evil, but am I like that? Would I do that to my best friend if this opportunity came up for me? Would I stab them in the back? Ooh, I don't want to think about that. Okay, I'm going to root for the good guy, right? It's all these sorts of things that happen when we're watching narratives be played out that, mirror back to us in our real life. And so I think, that's incredible. But what I think people do, especially with acting, and you could touch on this, like they do think it's just a pretend. They're just going out there and they're just faking it. But those are like, probably the worst scenes and movies of all time. What you're talking about makes it legit and it makes it real. So how do you train someone to get to that sort of level?
There's a technique. There are many techniques. You've heard of them. The method acting. That's the most popular one. But the technique I studied is called the emotional honesty technique. I spent a lot of years studying this in a conservatory and ultimately taught it. Lee Strasberg, who founded the method acting, and Sanford Meisner, Stella Adler, Uta Hagen, they were all colleagues at the same time in group theater. They all came up together in their 20s and 30s. They were actors. They each came up with their own acting method. I studied Sanford Meisner's. Lee Strasberg did the method. That's what a lot of people do. Emotional honesty acting is a whole package for developing your instrument, which is yourself, your emotional system, to convey the story. And whenever I would meet people when I was in my career, and even still, like I was a professional actor, like, oh, you're pretending right now. Then you have to explain to them, like, acting is like, we're all pretending all the time. Walking around with a representative, like the representative self, we know a lot about pretending, but the actor trains in undoing that. You talked about improv. Your job as an actor is to be so observant of what's happening in front of you and what it's doing to you, to come from a place that's really going on, not making something happen. We all know how to change the subject or modify what's going on. But what we don't have a lot of training in, and you talked about this, the yes and, is to allow it, accept it, receive it. I'm not going to have a lot going on about what it is or isn't. I'm just going to deliver from this place. I'm going to deliver from this place. There's no hesitation. Your training is to receive the moment and live from that moment. It's an incredibly exciting process because the first thing you do with actors when they come into this space is to simply have them watch each other one-on-one. So you and another actor would be in my studio, sitting with all of us around, all doing the same thing, by the way. The group support piece is not different from that team mentality, which is we all are having skin in the game. So whatever you're feeling up there, that embarrassment, the nervousness, we're all taking our turn. Like, we're all in it together. So there's incredible intimacy and support. There's safety in that. And that's why we talked about this. You can take really big risks because you have love and respect. Like, everyone's giving you all of the respect. So we start there. I make that very clear in my room. So when you get up there and you look at your other actor, you're observing the moment so that you can stop with the games you play. We all have our games we play. We all have our shit that shows up. Like, some people want to make someone laugh. That's their thing. Some people close off and they're just like, whatever you say, you run the show. And then some people, I talk a lot when I'm nervous. I fill the space. So you start to see your thing that shows up. And you just work with it because everyone arrives in the same place ultimately, but your journey to that is your own. So the moments as they unfold on stage, you're aware of yourself, and increasingly the training is to stop the habit to modify and start to deeply live in your gut and trust yourself that you can show up in the moment as it is and live from that place. I could say a lot more about that, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, just if you could expand on how meditation has helped you, arrive at that place.
Yeah.
As a meditator myself, and I know you're a big proponent of that. But for some people, it's
Yeah.
very hard, and some people don't see the benefit in it, or some people haven't tried it for long enough, or whatever the case may be, based on their life. But what's it done for you?
I think meditation's you can pick up exactly where we're in the conversation and talk about meditation. It's the same exact practice, Aaron. No different at all. I've stopped asking clients to start meditating when they work with me because it's such a barrier for some people to be like, I don't know. Like it gets to be a struggle unless it comes naturally to want to be present.
Mm.
Because meditation, I'd love to hear your experience with this. When you come to the spot of the now, the present moment, and you stop doing all the stuff of like what's going to happen, like ruminating on what did happen or worrying about what could happen, and you become present and observing just what it feels like to be here, everything rises up. The thoughts, like I gotta go change the laundry, I have to pee, like I've got to go make my list, all of the shit comes up. Or like, oh god, I'm still thinking about that thing, damn it. It starts to get hot, and people are like, I can't meditate, I'm not having this blissful like floating on a cloud experience. What we want to do is really learn the practice of sitting in the hot seat, and that's the allowing, like to feel it, like just feel that, let it do you, like let it make something else is going to happen. Now if you can just sit through that moment feeling like you can't meditate, well, here you are, you're still here, and then things can dissolve. And that process of like when the temperature goes down, you're like, oh, I'm still sitting here, I did it. There's a quality of clarity when the dust, like shake up the jar and it's all muddy, and then over time meditation just allows the water to get clear over time. And that clarity is, we started this conversation talking about coaches who have to do the work. My job is to stay clear in myself, and what an actor's job is to get clear on how they're shaking their own jar up all the time, and like set that aside to be here. And over time you become really present and in touch with what's really going on, rather than always saying what we think is going on or wish is going on.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, my experience with meditation, I couldn't buy into meditation until I understood its practical use. I couldn't,
Mm.
because for me, I like, I'm sort of an action oriented guy, and I needed to figure out, like, if I sit here and breathe for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, how is it going to practically apply and make my life better? Because if I know that, I'll do it. And once I figured that out, it was much easier for me to understand that I need to do it. Now my practice in the morning is sort of a prayer meditation mix, and I just found my groove with it. But how it practically applies to my life is that I figured out that it's my anchor. It's my anchor to the present moment. I ask my players all the time, what's important now? That's an acronym for win. So I use that in my own life. Okay, what's important now? I can only do that by anchoring to my breath. I can only anchor to my breath because I learned how to utilize my breath via a meditation practice. And so that sort of pathway helped me understand it. And now I can, Viktor Frankl style, figure out the in between stimulus and response with my breath as well. So if I'm getting agitated at my wife, or something happened at work or something, whatever, I can be like, but I'm not going to think to go to my breath in those moments if I've never done the work before. So so when I figured that out, when I studied other people who figured that out, then I understood the sort of practical application that this happens in my life. And I said this recently on another podcast, but I think it's important now here when thinking about fathers and husbands. I tell them all the time, you just had this hard day at work, and now you're in the driveway and you're about to walk into your house, and the kids are everywhere. There's going to be toys. Your wife might be trying to make dinner or clean up, or she might have a bad day or whatever. What can you do in the driveway for 5 minutes that's going to help you show up inside that house as the best version of yourself. You're dropping the deep work and you're going into deep love. If you don't have a meditation to practice at that point, then and if you don't see the practical application of that at that point, then I don't know if there's anything to help you. To sit in the car for 5 minutes, deep breathing, letting go of your day. It might have been a shitty day. A lot of stuff might have happened. You might have had really hard phone calls, but you're going to walk into your house and your kids are going to want to see you and they're going to be excited and you might step on some fucking Legos and that might hurt. And is that going to set you off? No, because you did this little practice to allow that to be a practical application inside of your real life to walk into a deep love situation. And so there's where you apply the meditation, but you have to have a practice to begin with. You have to do the work again in the dark before you can apply it in a real life situation. So once I figured that out, meditation and prayer became a very important part of my life.
I have so many questions right now for you.
Okay.
First, what was it that, because you said I'm not going to go sit until I see the practical application. Do you remember what happened to make you finally sit and try it? Like what was the thing that you're like, this is the practical application. Now I'll try it. Do you remember what that thing was?
I don't remember exactly, but I just remember hearing people talk about this stuff. And then when I was trying to figure out, because I didn't have all this stuff when I was an athlete, like trying to deep breathe and get into the present moment. I learned a little bit of it from this guy named Brian Kane, who's a mental performance coach. He's an excellent guy. But now when I'm coaching athletes, I had to, again, learn it myself to teach them. So when I figured out that if right before I step in the batter's box, I take a deep breath and I look at the barrel of my bat and I focus on one single point, that's going to help me be in tune for the at bat. And so I relate everything to sports. So I'm like, okay, what if I could do that in my life? Like, how is that? Okay, I'm about to sit down and have a conversation with Joanna. Okay, let's probably anchor to the present moment. Okay, let's deep breath. And so that sort of actionable item allowed me to do it. And then just like getting good at anything, I'm like, you got to do some hours. Okay, so I got to sit down and I got to figure out how my breathing works. Am I doing box breathing? Do I do long inhale, long exhale? What works for me? What doesn't? Am I thinking about something? Do I need a guided prompt? Am I just sort of floating? Am I trying to be a Jedi or Yoda or what's the avatar that I want to be like or anything like that? And so that was sort of the process to get to the point where I'm at. And then once I figured out that I liked meditation, I'm Jewish, so I add a little bit of a prayer to it for my morning prayer. And it just is like a nice little combination there for me.
So my other question was this metaphor of going into the drive, getting really present and clear and having be intentional from the driveway if you're a father, walking into your home. You said you want to walk into deep love. And I realized that I think some of us get hung up on when like the world is for me. Why aren't you all coming at with deep love? Like you're talking about being someone who creates it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get to that point? Like you're going from, some of us walk around being like, I want this to be for me. And you're coming in like, no, I'm going to be for you and for us. And coming from that place of being a creator of the love rather than expecting to receive it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't know if I have an answer to that question. Because I've separated my life into sort of three parts. It's like energy, work, and love. And I got to get the energy right first before I can go into work, before I can go into love. And then I want to be able to go deep into both. And so I separate them and have breaks throughout that allow me to go into those parts fully in what I'm trying to do. And so I don't know. I just don't like if I want to receive love from anyone except for my dog, no matter what I do, that guy is fired up to see me every time. But this is a family dog. It was my sister's. My sister is no longer with us, and so it lives with my parents. And so it's the most special little creature that we have. And every time I go over to my parents' house, he's like, his whole body fucking shakes and his tongue is out. And I could just see the excitement he has. And I like sort of see my sister there in him being excited to see me. So that's the only person that I can show up horribly and with bad energy and he'll still love me. But other than that, I want to try and show up in a way that I want the other person to feel when I show up, because I want to be in deep love and I want to do the same when I'm in work. And I've just sort of thought about that for separating my life into those key parts. And so, yeah, I don't know if that's a very sufficient answer, but that's just how I've done it.
Yeah. I want to talk about your hat now.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, suddenly I'm the podcast host. I'm like, let's talk about this now. But Champ, tell me about your hat.
This is my business, my sports performance business. And Champions Adjust is the name of the mindset program. But I'll tell you a funny story of where it came from, of where
I
Champions
want to
Adjust
know. That's what
came
I'm
from.
asking.
But now it's my mindset program. It's how I coach athletes. But it was born when I was in college playing baseball with my buddies, and we would be on like sort of drinking benders, and one of us would be like not feeling drinking today, and my buddy, his name is Al, he's my best man at my wedding. He'd be like, "Dude, Champions Adjust, figure it out." So in college, it was a bad peer pressure thing to get us to sort of drink more. And then
Oh, I get it. I see. It's a
yeah,
drink more, not
yes,
like you're hungover, go get hydrated, figure it
no,
out, show up in the field. It's like
no,
the opposite.
yeah, the total opposite, dude. You have
Get
some
more
more beer. I don't
fucked
care
up.
if you're hungover. Yeah, Champions Adjust. You got to figure it out. And so
You
fast
can
forward,
apply
like,
that logic to stuff that's more functional and useful. I get it. I see you. I get it.
yeah.
I'm
So
asking
yeah,
because
go
no,
ahead,
go.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then fast forward, like 10 years later, I was texting my buddies, hey, I'm trying to come up with this, brand for my mindset program and another sort of podcast that I do. And immediately he goes, Champions Adjust. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty fucking sweet. So yeah,
But you
that's
weren't like, no, that's yours.
he
You take it.
he wanted some royalties. So maybe he'll get a little bit of a check
Yeah.
every
Like,
once in a while. But
yeah.
but yeah, so anyways.
Adjust is a term that we use in training on stage for actors. I haven't even addressed what I do now because we'll go back in history, but obviously it really pertains. When you're working in the moment with someone on stage in a scene, because what we know is the script you're handed in the scene that is a breakup, the words really aren't what drives the scene. It's what's happening between people. So I used to train in New York City, and this is a good example. I had my teacher, she's amazing. Oh my God, amazing. She would see the moment and make you find it. So my script was like, how could you? And it's a breakup scene. Except at this time, I was in my 20s. The fellow actor's a guy, just a guy in my class, a friend. There was some sexual energy. Okay? That's just how it is. You don't know what's going to happen. But when you get on stage, your job isn't to edit it. But this is where it gets scary. And you have to find out before you step on stage in your craft, whatever your craft is what's your appetite? How deep are you going to go in your craft to commit to what you said you'd do, which is show up in the moment? So I get up there not wanting to go there.
Mm.
And so I'm like, oh, how could you? Like I'm making the moment be a breakup scene. Nope. She's like, okay, let's stop. And this is the training. She's like, look at him. And I was looking at him and we start to laugh. And she's like, start there. So then the line is, how could you? It's like flirting. So the scene evolves from what's actually happening. And then we ended up making out, by the way, against the wall. Because that's the training. In an HBO movie, I'm telling you this. There's one reason I'm telling you this, Aaron, because that is very uncomfortable for an actor to be like, this is a friend. I don't know this person. I am an actor. But what is the limit to my training? Because our job in an HBO show is to have a scene. But you can't stop in your training before the moment happens. So that happened in the scene, and it happens all the time. It happened in my studio. There all be all these unscripted screaming, like people kissing, crying, people leave in the middle of a scene. That's the messy stuff of work. Because the reason I'm telling you this is because adjust is the term I use as a coach for that moment I just told you. So my coach had me adjust to the real moment. She's like, stop making it happen, Joanna. Adjust. Look at what's happening. You adjust to that. And so that's the work, is to keep showing up and getting your angle where what's really happening. I want to say one thing. I don't know how much time we have left, but you talked about energy, work, and
we could
love.
talk for as long as you want.
Okay. Yeah. Energy. I have a thought about this. I want to hear what you think about this. When you talk about energy, those of us who are entrepreneurs, Aaron, have to center on our way of doing things, right? Like, did anyone hand you a blueprint for your business? Like, here, Aaron, go do XYZ steps. You had to create your way. You had mentors, you had systems and all these things.
Right.
But what we have to figure out when we go out and do business in the world is becoming your own life force. And I also am a person of faith. I pray. I'm a Buddhist, but I pray to God. You find your source and you be that source and you call in that source. And those of us who haven't figured out how to be a life force unto yourself, I think, well, let me say it differently. We struggle until we understand that that's really our job. Don't you agree? Here on the planet, we're meant to connect with something greater than ourselves and serve from that place. And until we find our way to that, it can be really hard. And even then, there's going to be work. But do you want the work of suffering by disconnection and like depression? Or do you want the work of showing up and being disciplined and like exerting, like what you said, being in the driveway and calling on that life force and showing up more fully? We're both work.
Mm-hmm.
But what are we up for? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I constantly come back to the idea of I'm trying to be the best version of myself in greatest service to the world. And I think that last part is the most important part, because if you think about mental health or mental wellness, there's a lot of just self love, self care, self respect, self trust, self commitment. Oh my God, self. And yes, there is a part where you have to work on yourself first, right? Because that just like that is what it is. But
Right.
once you sort of start to get beyond yourself and think about a higher purpose or something that's deeper than you, then you want to become in service to others. And being in service to others inherently is selfish because it always makes you feel better. And so there's just this like cycle of things that happen. But you have to have a North Star, something that's driving you in the right direction, whether that be, you know, a goal, a mission, a purpose, your core values, your first principles, your family, you know, something that's deeper than you, that when you get punched in the face and knocked down and things go horrible and there's uncontrollable, terrible circumstances that none of us have any power over, you have something to lean up against. There's an anchor, there's a faith that you know that you're resilient enough to overcome these challenges and move forward beyond this. And if you don't, I mean, for me at least, pain was the greatest motivator for change. I needed something horrible to happen so I could step into the person that I'm meant to be. But we don't all have to wait for that. I think we do, regardless of if we have to or not. But maybe hearing all of these types of conversations will sort of move people along a little bit before that thing happens, because it's going to happen to all of us. And then
Yeah.
maybe they step into who they're meant to be for the whole world.
What is it you try to do for your audience? I mean, I've heard a few of your episodes, but I'm just curious if you can, because I feel like we're touching on to why we do what we do. Why do you do what you do?
Well, my sort of massive transformative purpose, I learned that from a class that I took, which I really like, is to end mental suffering. And so not end mental suffering in a sense that I'm going to cure like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, but to sort of end the suffering that I know that we have control over. And that's what
Yeah.
sort of drives me in all sorts of ways, with the conversations I have on this podcast, with the way I want to talk to people, with the way I want to show up in the world, in my relationships. And so this podcast hopefully is a reflection of that. I mentioned my sister who
Yeah.
passed away. She died because of suicide, or we lost her through suicide. So that sort of spun me on this mental health journey, of trying to figure out what that means, and sort of that transformed into this and these conversations and who I want to be in the world. But that's always my guiding light. And so if I'm moving towards that direction, because I don't think that'll happen in my lifetime, but at least if I moved the needle a little bit towards people understanding and being equipped with the tools and the protocols and the proactive nature to handle these sorts of things a little bit better than we do, then I have sort of done my job on this planet. And so that's what drives me. And then this podcast is just about sharing those stories and hopefully making people feel more loved and connected and giving them insights that they can actually apply to their life, and you know, feeling like
It's
they actually
amazing that
matter.
you're an example of someone who can take that level of pain and impact and bring it forward. Because I think we all seek a way to work with what greatly pains us, and especially tragedies. Like, that's not easy work to um, carry forward in the world. So thank you for doing that, because I do also know people who have been affected by suicide, and that's a whole world that is invisible, that's here to, like, right now.
Yeah.
You know, and I know people who are high performers who struggle with that. And the biggest thing we could do is get support in a way that really empowers us. And the tricky thing about getting support is how weak one feels when you step forward to get it,
Mm-hmm.
because it feels like it costs so much to, like, be supported. And but that's really all we need, is to be connected in a way that really is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
That's not the work that I focus on, but I really know how it's really needed, you know?
Yeah, I mean, just one moment can change someone. I mean, you think about the story I told about that kid. What if that kid had received different reaction? He's now not willing to step up to the plate with the game on the line because of how it turned out last time. But now I guarantee every game he plays, he's like, "Oh, I want to be there. Oh, I want to be there when the game is on the line." And he's going to be able to be more vulnerable with everything in his life, with everything in his life. And there's a little acronym that I like to use, is developed by this mental health nonprofit called Active Minds. If someone comes to you with something that's challenging, you just, it's called VAR. You validate, you appreciate, and then you refer. Refer is like thinking about other steps potentially after. But the two most important parts are validate. So if I tell you, Joanna, that it's just been really hard for me to get out of bed the last couple of days because I've just been feeling ick. Oh, you just got to validate that. There's nothing that you don't have to save my life. You just say, oh shit, that sounds like
Right.
it's really, really hard. And then you appreciate me, because that takes a lot of courage for me to speak out. And you're just like, hey, thanks for telling me that. Now you've actually created a connection. Now there's relationship. Now the conversation is obviously a little more fluid than that. And then you think about, okay, what skills are available? What resources are available? Can I sit with you for a little bit? What do you need from me? But I think that's a powerful tool, especially when someone comes to you. This is a lot for peers and happens a lot in schools. Like when something comes to you, it just feels uncomfortable, or they tell you
Yeah.
something that you're just not prepared for. Think about going through those couple steps, and then obviously refer to them to counselor, teacher, someone, an adult situation. But there's a lot to be said about that. But thank you for
Yeah, that's
that.
yeah, that your story, I have a story. It's that you know, I've recovered myself from addiction, alcohol addiction. And uh I was in denial for a very long time that I had that, because it's not something that I want to go around talking about. But it's real. And the struggle, you talk about struggles and having um, validate, accept, appreciate, and refer. Um, when it comes to being sober, I there's a story I wanted to tell, and I'm like, where did that story just go? Um, Getting support. I got support. That was where I wanted to go with it. And
Mm,
what my counselor helped me choose in order to, like, show up in my life being able to talk about my story was feeling safe. Because to be able to be safe for other people, this is why I wanted to share this with you, because to validate someone who's so vulnerably sharing something, like deep, like, even if it's not the deepest, like, hey, I'm, you know, spent, like, last night thinking I was going to kill myself, or just saying, like, hey, I had a hard time getting out of bed, that can be really hard to even open your mouth to say to anybody. But to be safe in having that, to have someone be a safe person, is huge. And I think about creating myself, because I have two kids, a 4 and a 6-year-old. I want to be their safe person. If I, like, parenting goals, when they grow up, are they going to come to me to talk about stuff because they feel safe with me? Or are they going to go off and like struggle? And I struggled. I did not talk about what I felt. So I had to train myself in that. And once I trained myself in that, I realized like I have to stop drinking. I can't drink. I have a problem with that because I've used it to modify my mood. But to be safe and to be safe and feel safe and to be safe for other people feels like part of that to me, Erin. Like working with mental illness and to be able to be there for people who have it.
Yeah. I mean, it really boils down to like the number one thing that life is about is just building great relationships. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to just simplify everything into just the easiest thing possible, you talked about it already. The beginner's mindset, which is like being curious and building great relationships, and then you add on great health. I mean, that's it. Just like, you know what I mean? Like,
And
there's
love
so
is
many.
the way. Love is the way because
Right?
we end up at love. We started at love and we'll end there. So that's just the path.
It
Love
is.
really is all about love. Mm-hmm.
And if we can try and do that the best we can with everything that's thrown around, the war, societal issues, culture or whatever, right? All of those things are going to happen. Most of them are out of our control. Of course, we can do good things in the world to try and make the world a better place. Of course, that's really, really, really important. But if you don't focus on the fundamentals of like try to have great relationships where you have a support system and you have people to lean on and you're taking care of your health on a regular basis and you're trying to be curious about the things around you, I think we just make it really complicated a lot of times because of social media, right? Because so many people are trying to sell so many different things and do so many types of things and make things more complicated with these, things. But like, it really just like is about being brilliant at the basics. And I go back to that all the time of like, okay, Aaron, like maybe you're trying to do too much. Like, go back to the basics. What's making you feel good? What's not? Stop this, start this, continue this. All right, here we go. Onwards.
Yeah. That's a good way of summarizing. You're
Yeah.
you're really someone who does the work, and I really appreciate how you show up to share that because that really influences us out here.
Well, thank you. I feel like I talked way too much on the episode where I brought you on to my show, but
We wanted to have a conversation, and a conversation we had. So,
yeah, definitely. Well, to sort of wrap us up, is there anything that you want people to know about the work you're doing now, or something that we might have missed,
yeah.
or just something to put a little bow on top of this
Well,
convo?
the cold plug is, I work with people to get on stage and feel really like confident finally owning their story and selling their business, raising money, building a following based on who they are. That's what I do, my bread and butter. You couldn't have said it better though, Aaron. It's about building quality relationships. And when I work with clients, it's people who show up to do the work and they're really here to get to the next level. That jazzes me. And I appreciate knowing you because you are about that too. So if people wanted to find me, my website's joannahortonmcpherson.com. I have a course coming online this year to take my process and do it on video course
Mm,
with group coaching. So it's a little more accessible for those who just want to get the process, but not dive in the deep end with me. And yeah, I got a book coming out next year. Uh, won't talk about that next time. We'll share more
yes.
about that.
Can I ask you just about what was it like creating your online course? And how that went for you? Because I have one as well for Champions Adjust, but I'm thinking about doing something maybe differently. Or what did you do there?
We're launching it in a few months. We haven't launched it yet. The process was really to get my system in a way that can be followed
Mm,
easily. But I think having a community really makes a difference. We talked a lot about being on a team, getting on
yeah,
stage, but to have a safe place to put yourself out there and meet other people, get feedback from each other, and go through the process together is going to be really powerful to have that community.
yeah, yeah. I
What
think
about you?
um,
Your course, what's your experience?
yeah. I mean, I basically just recorded almost every session I did with one-on-one clients, and then used that as a way to build out my my online course because I knew potentially what was resonating, the sequence I wanted to go into. But I'm thinking about just redoing all the videos. But
Yeah.
I have all the
You want to
worksheets that I
go
built out and all that. But
get into a studio. You're worth
yeah,
it. Get into a studio, get them to record you so you can really get your master class out there.
yeah, I probably should do that. That's a 2025. We'll do it in
There
this
you
year.
go.
But I think online communities are one of the best things that the internet has brought us. I would say that, because
I
for a
would say
lot of
also,
heat that the internet gets, it's going to be around forever. Like, it has connected people who would never normally be connected, and that's a gift.
It's a gift. The people we can talk. First of all, you're in a different city, a different state. I'm in Arizona. You're in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're online. We're on the internet together, and everyone can hear our conversation just because, like, virtual world connects us. I think that's an asset for those of us who are doing work to help people grow, is that you can do that from your own home and meet people that you never ever would have come across, but they could be like people you would tell, you don't even know their last name and they know everything about you.
Yeah.
That's deep.
They could be the coolest people you ever meet, right?
Yeah. And you may not even know them in person,
Yeah, that's so, yeah. Well, Joanna, thank you. I appreciate you. Very happy to know you. And thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.